Can you guess what these things are? This is today's topic. Are you ready to run a gun? It's time for blast off. Let's go. Hey guys, Todd here with you. Welcome back to Bassin 101. Hair jigs. Man, I've been wanting to do this thing for a while. It's kind of hard to get all the stuff together. I had some custom jigs made for me by Jay Worth and Fred LaBerge. And very excited to showcase some of these, plus some of the ones I've tied. And kind of give you an idea a little bit about technique, trailers, so forth, so on. Your standard hair jig, it's very similar to finesse fishing. It's just either slow crank, spinning, or casting, so it's your choice. Mostly these are designed for river fishing, but you can fish them in reservoirs. I'll get to those here in a few minutes. But right off the bat, your typical river fishing or just your finesse fishing in shallow water in general, you have just a regular ball style type jig. Now these are tied by Jay Worth. And these are beautiful. He really did a good job. It's got a sandpike pattern, largemouth bass pattern. He's also got a perch. That's gorgeous. And the only modification I've done to him, which he thought it was kind of cool, was I put a weed guard on there. And all I did was just drill a little hole back here, a little 16th inch hole, some 12-pound steel leader, and I formed it into a weed guard. Just kind of snaps right in there. So it's very easy to undo this. But I kind of like these things to have a weed guard on them for the simple fact that they just don't get hung up. But another ball type jig like that, made for me by Fred LaBerge up in Canada. I'll put his information here too, so you can email him. He tied me some hair jigs. I haven't made these weedless yet. But he tied me some of these hair jigs. These are really nice. And he also tied me a black and a brown marabou, which I have actually added weed guards to these. But marabou jigs is kind of in their own individual class. I just thought I'd show these off because Fred does a really good job with these. And I'm very thankful for these guys making these things for me because they really are nice. Another one, ball style jig or ball head type jig, is type of hair with the feathers in it, which kind of gives them their own trailer. This is one that I tied. It's just a typical olive and white type of shad. And then you have jigs that have their own trailers tied in like that, but more of a crawfish type pattern. And these are ones I've tied and poured myself. These are 3/16 with a standard fiber weed guard. And I have these done up. You can see these kind of flare. I did this in kind of a brown and red type of crawfish deal, which looks really good in the water, fished by itself, in more of a jigging type fashion, like you throw a jig and pig. And I've got a black and blue as well, same type of thing. I kind of keep the feathers kind of pointing out like claws and so forth. Like I said, this is not a typical slow cranking type of finesse deal. It's finesse fishing, but you fish these a lot like you do a jig because they have their own trailers on, so you don't have to worry about putting anything on them. Now, speaking of jigs, now we're getting into like a power finesse kind of thing, maybe a little more stout spinning tackle or even casting tackle. And these are the ones that Jay made for me also. These are 1/4 ounce fiber weed guard heads. Now these could be fished one or two ways. These style jigs can be fished one or two ways. You can fish them as they are, or you can put a trailer on the back. I would not suggest a pork chunk type trailer out of plastic, because it's one, the hair is not thick enough for something like that. These are. I'll get to these in a second. But this is more of like a grub, or back in the day we used to use spin strips, little pork spin strips. But these type deals here are fished like you would a jig. But if you fish these without a trailer, then you can fish them very similar to the finesse type hair jigs. So these are kind of you can go one way or the other. Anytime you tie a hair jig like this out of bucktail, and it's kind of thin, because it's very finessey, you want that hair to really move in the water, you can fish these by themselves. But personally, I would have like a grub or a spinnerbait trailer or something like that on the back of these. Aren't these beautiful? And fish them that way. Now, Jay also tied me another type with a football head, and this is a largemouth bass pattern. Now, something like this, you could put an olive grub on the back, but being largemouth bass, and it's also thicker. See how much thicker that hair is compared to one of these? You've got a little more volume of hair here. So this, I would definitely throw this with a trailer. But like I said, either a white type of grub or spinnerbait trailer, or maybe olive. That's how I would do that. The other ones, last but not least, that he sent me are 3/8 Arky style heads. And these have the thicker ties on them with a little bit thicker bucktail. These, I would absolutely throw a trailer on them and flip these into cover, or fish them in cover on rocks or brush piles. And something like this, I would throw like a Zoom skinny chunk. They're real thin, because what you don't want to do is to spread this bucktail out like this when you go to put a trailer in there. You don't want that. So you want the head of whatever you use to be real thin, whether it's a plastic worm, like I said, spinnerbait trailer, two-leg spinnerbait trailer, split tail, or whatever. Now, again, like I said, technique. Very similar to how you fish a jig or a grub. I know a lot of you guys out there like to fish grubs, which is kind of a lost art. But even with the grubs, you got these deals right here. A lot of it just depends on the style of hair jig. Like I said, with the ball heads, you definitely want more of a finessey, slow drag, either in a water column, much like the slider video I did. You fish these type of lures, or these type of hair jigs, much like you do a slider worm, or any kind of a small finesse worm that you just slow drag in the water. But now when you start getting into the fiber guards, these type deals, or even the ones I just showed you that I tied, the crawfish type patterns, these you're wanting a jig on the bottom. And especially the ones that have the thicker hair, you can fish those more like an actual jig. Now, there's a difference between a hair jig and a bucktail. Now, a bucktail is a completely different lure. Me personally, once you hit the 3/8 to ½ ounce category, it's now a bucktail. And a bucktail is a completely different style of fishing. I've seen guys fish bucktails on YouTube. They call them hair jigs. Where I come from here in Virginia, the lake I fished all the time growing up is known as a big striper lake in the country. They're called bucktails. These are hair jigs. The longer tied ones, most of them are white. They're called bucktails. And you put a big old 6-inch grub on the back of that sucker. Back in the 70s and 80s, we used to color the tip of it black. Maybe some of you guys know that trick. And chuck that thing out there and just slow crawl it on the bottom for stripers, even largemouth. Big largemouth hit that thing too. But that's a bucktail. You start getting 3/8, ½ 3/4, 1 ounce, That's not this kind of fishing. This is a finesse style of fishing, but it's more of a power finesse type fishing. Anytime you use a hair jig, unless you're throwing these little ones like this that don't have the fiber guard, now you're finesse fishing, okay? When you start getting into the fiber guards like these, now you're power finesse fishing, and you can start throwing trailers on the back of those things and start pitching them into brush, rock, weeds, things like that. But because it's a hair jig, it's a much smaller profile with that trailer. It's not as bulky as, say, a jig, you know, a silicone skirt jig or rubber skirt jig. But either way, I'm going to put Jay's link right here. So make sure you look up Jay. You know, he kind of reminds me a little bit. Are you familiar with Bob Ross and the paintings? Jay reminds me of Bob Ross as far as, you know, tying these jigs. I'm just waiting for one day for him to say, I'm going to put on some happy little bucktail here, just doing its own little thing. He's awesome to watch. Check out his channel because he's really good at what he does. He's a very talented guy. And I'm very thankful that he made these for me because I can't say enough about it. Really good. I'm also going to put right here Fred LaBerge's email. If you want some of these type marabou jigs, I mean, that thing's beautiful. Look at that. Talk about fluffy. That's fluffy. Or if you want, these are beautiful too. I love the hair he used on these things. And he doesn't tie them very thick. But these are some of the bucktails he sent me. Well, not bucktails, but the hair jigs using bucktails. These are beautiful too. He does a really good job with these as well. So make sure you contact him. He's in Canada though, so it might cost a little bit for shipping, but it's worth it. He does a really good job with these. That's all I got, guys. I've been waiting for a while to do this video for hair jigs, go over the tackle with you and everything. You don't need heavy line, except when you get to these. Like I said, these are, you could either with a heavier spinning rod or casting, 10, 12, 14, 17 pound test. Don't be afraid to throw these things in where you throw a regular jig because they have the exact same type heads. They're just tied with hair. It's the only difference. So that's all I got, guys. Big shout out and thank you to Jay Worth. Thank you, buddy. These things are beautiful. And my buddy Fred LaBerge. Man, these things are awesome too, man. I thank you so much for your support and making these things for me. These are awesome. So until next time, guys, may the Father bless you, keep you in Yeshua's name. And as always, fish on.